I never thought my own daughter would be the one to leave me out in the cold. Never imagined the man she chose to marry would rob me of my dignity when I was already at rock bottom, and that she'd let it happen. But what they didn't see coming was that life still had one final move left for me. And when I made it, everything shifted. Brace yourself, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories like this one. My name is Margaret. I'm 58, and up until recently, I believed in the idea of unconditional love, especially within a family. My world revolved around my husband and our daughter, Amanda. Every dinner I cooked, every holiday I planned, every penny I saved, it was all for them. When my husband died of cancer last year, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. But I reminded myself I still had Amanda. I still had my little girl. I sold the home my husband and I had built from the ground up in Cedar Park, just north of Austin. Too many memories. Too many nights waking up expecting to hear him making coffee in the kitchen. Amanda and her husband, Chad, offered me a place to stay. Well, Amanda did. Chad barely acknowledged me when I moved in. I tried not to disturb anything, kept mostly to the small back room. I cleaned, cooked, offered to run errands. Anything to stay useful, anything to avoid being a burden. But Chad had this way of making me feel invisible, or worse, like an intruder. His eyes always had that look, like I was a problem he didn't sign up for. It started small. Eye rolls when I asked a simple question. Changing the channel right in the middle of something I was watching. Once, I even heard him mutter "freeloader" as he passed by me in the hall. I told myself maybe I misheard, but deep down, I knew I didn't. Amanda never said anything. I looked to her, hoping for some backup, a word, anything. She'd just brush it off. "He's stressed," she'd say. "Work's been hard." I swallowed my pride and kept my mouth shut. That's what mothers do, right? But then came that night. The night it all fell apart. We were sitting at the dinner table. I had made chicken pot pie, Chad's favorite. Amanda was on her phone, Chad sipping his beer like always. The silence was thick. Then Chad looked up and said, "You know, maybe it's time we stop pretending this is temporary. We're not running a shelter." Amanda froze. I just stared at him. "What are you saying?" I asked. He smirked. "I'm saying, how long is this going to keep going? You're not working. You're not helping with bills. We didn't sign up for this." My chest tightened. I turned to Amanda. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "Maybe it's better," she mumbled, "if you find something more stable, for everyone." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up, walked to the back room, and packed what little I had left. 2 suitcases. That's all I owned now. I didn't even cry while packing. The tears didn't come until I was outside, standing in the wind, coat pulled tight, and realizing I had nowhere to go. Amanda didn't come out. Chad didn't say goodbye. I sat on the curb for an hour, phone dead, heart broken. I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to be erased. That night, I found a room at a cheap motel, the kind with flickering lights and vending machines that never work. I lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. What did I do to deserve this? The next morning, I messaged Amanda. "I understand. I love you always." No reply. A week later, I sent another. Then another. Birthdays, small updates, all met with silence. 3 months passed. Each day dragged. I applied for jobs, anything I could find. But no one wanted to hire a grieving widow pushing 60 with no recent work experience. I thought about cleaning houses, babysitting, anything to keep going. But my body didn't move like it once did. The loneliness clung to me like a second skin. But worse than that was the shame. I had poured my whole life into that girl. How could she let me go so easily? One evening, digging through a box of old family keepsakes just to feel close to something, anything, I found it. My mother's diary. I couldn't remember the last time I saw it. Maybe I'd never even read it. But something in me reached for it, almost without thinking. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, turned to a random page, and there it was. A name, a memory, a secret that shifted the ground beneath me. I remember the moment exactly, the way my fingers trembled, my pulse racing. In an instant, I stopped being just the mother who got pushed aside. I became something else, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. They had taken everything, but they had no clue what I still carried. After that night, the days all blended into a single blur, like pale watercolors bleeding into one another on soggy paper. The motel room reeked of stale air and distant cigarette smoke. The vending machine outside buzzed constantly, a low hum of defeat. I stayed quiet. I didn't cry every night, but when I did, it was silent. The kind of crying that shakes your whole body, but stays trapped inside because you already know no one's coming. On day 4, I texted Amanda again. Just a simple line, "I'm okay. Just wanted to see how you're doing." No answer. 2 weeks later, I tried again. Just a heart emoji. Still nothing. I told myself she was busy, that maybe Chad had poisoned her against me. But the more days that passed, the more that hope inside me started to rot. Money was running low. I looked for part-time work, grocery stores, reception desks, even a little diner out by the highway. But everywhere, it was the same story. Too much experience, not the right fit. Polite ways of saying I was too old and too broken. One night, I found myself on the floor of the motel room, sorting through the only box I had brought that wasn't filled with clothes. It held old photos, a few letters, fragments of a life I used to know, and at the very bottom, tucked away and nearly forgotten, was a small leather-bound book. My mother's diary. I blinked. I didn't even remember packing it. I nearly put it back. But the way the worn leather felt in my hands stopped me. I turned on the old lamp beside the bed and flipped open the first page. Her handwriting hit me hard, the same loops and swirls she used to leave in my lunchbox notes as a child. Ink, always ink. The first few entries were nothing special. Notes about the weather, church, complaints about prices. But then I reached one dated June. He came again today. Said he wished things were different, that he wished I could be his wife. But he has a family, a business, a name to protect. Margaret will never know. She must never know. I just pray one day she understands how much I loved her, even if she was born out of mistake and desire. I read it once, then again. She must never know. My chest felt tight. I kept flipping. More entries, whispered meetings, hotels, envelopes of cash she didn't want to take but had no choice. He was never named, just initials. HJS. And then in February, another shock. He said he's made arrangements, that if anything happens, Margaret will have something. A piece of what he built. It won't be official, too risky. But he promised there would be a trust, a letter. His lawyer will know. Mr. Goldstein. It hit me like thunder. Goldstein. The name rang a bell. I had seen it somewhere. It took me 2 days and more than a few shaky hours at the motel's public computer. But I found him. Leonard Goldstein, retired estate lawyer, still listed with a small private firm in Dallas. I didn't pick up the phone. I couldn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. So instead, I wrote a letter. A real one. Ink on paper. I told him who I was, who my mother was, and begged, just begged, for a conversation. 2 weeks later, the call came. I'll never forget the way his voice caught when I said my mother's name. He knew her, not just professionally, but personally. "I always wondered if you'd reach out someday," he said. "There's something you need to see." The next morning, I boarded a Greyhound to Dallas. My suitcase was only half packed, just in case he turned out to be another grifter. But the moment I stepped into that quiet office lined with old law books and the kind of silence that holds weight, I knew it was real. He handed me a sealed, yellowed envelope, brittle at the edges. The name on the front stopped me cold. "To my daughter, Margaret Louise." The sender? Harold James Sterling, founder of Sterling Energy, a name I'd seen in headlines and oil company reports my entire life. A man with a family, a reputation, and an empire. I couldn't finish the letter in one sitting. I broke before the second paragraph. He confessed it all. The affair, the guilt, the hidden affection, and the promise. "In the event of my death, I have insured a portion of my personal assets, untraceable through my estate, are to be delivered to you via Mr. Goldstein. You are my blood, and though I lacked the courage to acknowledge you in life, I claim you now in death." Mr. Goldstein slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank records, modest investments, ownership documents, deeds. The total, just over $1 million. I stared at the figures, then at him. "This is real," I whispered. He nodded. "It's always been yours." My chest felt like it might explode. Not because of the money, but because, for the first time in my life, someone saw me, chose me, claimed me. I didn't cry or laugh or fall apart. I just sat there, silent, letting the truth settle like the first rain after a long drought. That night, back in the motel, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the same cracked ceiling I'd studied for months. Only now, a smile crept in. They thought they had discarded me, that I was broken, but they had no idea. I was just beginning. I didn't return to Austin right away. Something in me had shifted. I wasn't just Margaret, the cast-off mother. I was someone entirely new, someone who had lived her whole life in someone else's shadow and was now standing in the sun. For the first time in years, I wasn't suffocating under shame. I was breathing in clarity. I stayed in Dallas a few more days, wandering unfamiliar streets, sipping coffee in quiet cafes, watching strangers move through their lives. And for once, I didn't envy them. I observed them. I studied the smiles hiding sadness, the eyes that had seen too much. I wondered who among them had once felt erased. Mr. Goldstein gave me more than an inheritance. He gave me time. Time to think. Time to become. What I now held in my hands wasn't just money. It was leverage. It was freedom. And I didn't yet know what I'd do with it, only that I'd never be powerless again. That's when I saw it, buried in a real estate auction listing. A small apartment complex in East Austin. A bit worn, but solid. Familiar. Too familiar. It was their complex. Amanda and Chad's building. My hands trembled. It had been listed as distressed. The owner behind on taxes. The auction scheduled in 2 weeks. I didn't flinch. With Mr. Goldstein's help, I registered an LLC. Anonymous. Untraceable. I filed the paperwork, wired the funds, and placed the bid. This wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about reclaiming space. The very space where they had decided I was disposable. The auction happened quietly. No fanfare. No drama. I walked away the legal owner, unnoticed and unbothered. Just like that, the very building that had once spat me out, bags in hand, dignity in pieces, was mine. I stared at the deed on my desk and whispered, "Let's see how Chad handles paying rent to the mouth he refused to feed." A month later, tenant notices went out. lease terms under review, rent reassessed. For Chad and Amanda, the figure wasn't doubled, it was tripled. Full market rate, plus every cent they owed. I didn't have to witness the meltdown to know it came. I could feel it ripple from a distance. But it was never about the money. It was pride. Chad needed control, and I had stolen it, silently. Amanda tried to reach out 2 days later, the first time since I was kicked out. Her call went to voicemail. "Mum, something's off. The rent's insane. Chad's freaking out. Can we talk?" I didn't call back. It wasn't revenge. It was gravity. Weight pressing down on the choices they made. I drove by one night. Their lights glowed, shadows moved. Amanda pacing, Chad yelling. I stayed for a moment, then left. A part of me felt empty, another felt justified, and one part ached deeply. Because even now, despite everything, I would have given anything to be let back in. Not to the building, but into my daughter's heart. But I knew it wasn't time. So I stayed quiet. Sometimes the heaviest justice makes no sound, and I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks later, I saw Amanda at the grocery store. She didn't see me. I was hidden, 2 aisles over. She looked drained, her hair a mess, her cart half full, cheap groceries, generic labels. She paused at a box of mac and cheese, then checked her phone. Maybe a text from Chad. Her shoulders slumped. She set it back. That broke something in me, not out of pity, but memory. Of a little girl who cried into my shirt over scraped knees, who made me check for monsters. Now she lived with one. I went home and sat in stillness for hours, thinking about how far we drifted. This wasn't punishment. It was consequence. Long overdue. I had a plan now. The building was only the first move. A long, patient game. Quiet. Strategic. With the LLC, Margaret Louise, ML Holdings, fully registered and ownership transferred, I started fixing things. Small repairs. Leaky pipes. Faulty locks. Flickering lights. Chad didn't notice. Too busy sending rage-filled emails to the manager, demanding explanations. But I knew how he worked. He wouldn't leave. That would mean losing. Amanda, as always, would follow. So I moved forward. New signs went up, cameras installed, mailboxes updated, everything under ML Holdings. No one knew who owned it. Then came the inspection notice. Mandatory. Chad's reply was pure fury. All threats, no substance. I read it and smiled. He was coming apart, and I didn't have to lift a hand. Meanwhile, I was becoming a version of myself I'd never met before. My hair was styled differently now. Sleeker clothes. I moved with direction. I began attending business mixers under an alias, learning the ins and outs of real estate, making quiet connections. No one cared about where I came from. They just saw a calm woman with sharp focus and cash in hand. The best disguise is the truth left unspoken. One morning, I passed Amanda and Chad in the parking lot after leaving a tenant board meeting. Sunglasses on, hair in a tight bun, documents tucked under my arm. Amanda glanced once. Chad didn't even blink. That night, I sat with tea in my lap, thinking how strange it is to walk past your own daughter and be a ghost. Not from weakness, but because you've grown beyond the image they had of you. They couldn't see me now because the version they once controlled no longer existed. She was gone. Amanda kept calling. Soft voicemails, unsure. "Hi, Mom. Just wondering if you had a minute. I know things are messy right now." I didn't call back, not to punish her, but to let her feel the emptiness she'd carved. And every time guilt tried to find me, I reopened my mother's journal. Those words etched in memory. Margaret will never know. She must never know. But I did know. And with that truth came armor no one could bend. I wasn't the woman begging to stay under their roof anymore. I owned the roof. I never believed revenge was about retaliation. It was about restoration, balance, a reset. But when I saw Chad's reply to the rent increase, I felt something flicker. Subject line: rent increase. This is unacceptable. It has to be a mistake. Tripling our rent? That's criminal. I demand to speak to the owner. We've been reliable tenants for 3 years. This is theft signed Chad D. Harmon. As if the name meant something. I read it 3 times before forwarding it to the manager with one line. Please respond with clause C. Market rate terms. No exceptions. Chad wasn't just mad. He was blindsided. His ego had never considered someone might beat him at his own game. He was used to power. Now he answered to a stranger. Amanda called again that night. The tone was different. No layers, just raw. Mum, I know you're not picking up. I need to talk. Things are bad. He's lashing out. I miss you. I really do. Her voice cracked on the last word. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could call, tell her it would be okay, pretend I could fix things. But I didn't, because it wasn't okay, and I couldn't clean up a mess she helped make. She let him discard me like an overdue bill, and now that the weight had shifted, she remembered how to reach me. Number. Let the silence settle a little longer. The following week, I approved more upgrades. New paint, brighter hallway lights, better landscaping. Chad's inflated rent wasn't punishment. It was funding improvements for everyone else. That was the irony. The building thrived. He just refused to see it. He started leaving angry notes at the office door. Water pressure is trash. Garbage is piling up. What are we even paying for? We ignored every single one. Amanda stopped calling. She switched to quiet texts instead. Short texts came in. Hey, can we talk? I really need you. Then, silence again. Meanwhile, I kept watching the bank statements. ML Holdings was solid, profitable even. The tenants were quiet, paid on time, followed rules. Only Chad made noise. And Amanda, she was stuck in the middle of the storm. But things shifted when I received the quarterly report. Photos attached. Their unit told a story. Mildew in the bathroom, cracked tiles in the kitchen, mail piling at the door. They were cutting corners, living thin. I didn't feel pity. I felt precision. This was never just about money. It was about control. And Chad was losing his grip. Rumor had it he'd picked up extra shifts. Amanda had been spotted crying on the back steps. They were collapsing from within, and I hadn't spoken a single word. That's what stayed with me. I used to beg Amanda to see him, to see herself. Now, they were drowning in silence, and I was above it all, literally. My new place overlooked their courtyard. Better building, higher floor, safer street. A view they couldn't afford. I didn't watch often, just enough to remember I wasn't crazy, that the betrayal had been real, that consequences were earned. And yet, some nights, I still sat by the window, phone in hand, staring at Amanda's last message. I really need you. The mother in me ached. But the woman I'd become knew this was just the start. I used to think heartbreak was loud. Slammed doors, screaming matches, public scenes. But real heartbreak is quiet. A voicemail left unheard. A text you never open. The silence between you and someone who once called you mommy. The call stopped. The texts slowed. But the fallout grew. Building staff said the tension inside their unit had turned sharp, cold, and visible. Chad lashed out, refused repairs, made demands. Amanda, they said, looked hollow. Like sleep hadn't touched her in days. I didn't feel joy. This wasn't satisfaction. It was something worse, watching my daughter stay in a cage and call it love. Then came a report after a noise complaint. Screaming. Accusations. Chad shouting you ruined this and slamming the door. He didn't return till morning. Amanda stayed locked in the dark, curtains drawn, lights off. I waited, not for him, for her. 2 long, aching days passed. Then, just as the sky began to dim, my intercom buzzed. "Hi, this is Amanda Harmon. I was wondering if Margaret, my mom, lives here." My chest tightened. I froze at the screen. Then slowly, I pressed the door release. 10 minutes later, a soft knock. I opened the door to find her standing there, haunted, pale, mascara smeared, shirt wrinkled. She looked 20 years older. We stared. No words, just silence. Then softly, "Hi, Mom." I stepped aside. She walked in like she wasn't sure she belonged. The room was still. Only the quiet clink of cups as I made tea. I didn't ask why she came, didn't ask how she was. I handed her the mug and sat across from her. I waited. "I don't know where to start," she said, barely above a whisper. I said nothing. Her eyes dropped. He's not easy. He's angry all the time, blames the rent, blames me, blames the dog next door for God's sake. Still, I stayed silent. I thought I was doing the right thing. Back then, when we asked you to leave, as if I had a choice. I just wanted peace. "Not more fights," Chad said. She paused. "He said you'd never leave unless we pushed you out. And God, I hate myself for agreeing." I took a slow sip of tea. "I miss you," she whispered. "But I don't know how to fix this." I studied her face. Every line, every twitch. She wanted forgiveness, but was too scared to ask. So, I gave her what I could. Silence. Sometimes silence feels safer than the truth. We sat like that for nearly an hour. She didn't ask for money, didn't ask for help. She just wanted to be near me, and I let her. When she finally stood, she reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything." I didn't say it back. I just held her hand a moment longer than she expected. She pulled away first, tears welling up, then walked out. I didn't cry, but the moment the door clicked shut, I sank into my chair, clutching the warmth of her teacup like a lifeline. She had come, looked me in the eye, and now I knew the cracks were finally showing. Real power never raises its voice. No slammed doors, no shouted threats. You pull a string here, close a door there, and watch those who underestimated you squirm. And Chad, he was squirming. After Amanda's visit, things got darker in that apartment. No camera needed. I could feel the unraveling. The maintenance crew said Chad was unhinged, storming the office twice a week, demanding to know who owned the building. Names, faces, someone to blame. Not having one sent him spiraling. He started digging. I expected it. Chad never accepted defeat quietly. I'd seen him rifling through Amanda's phone when she took too long at the store. Checking receipts, counting minutes. Possessive didn't cover it. When he tried to uncover ML Holdings, I was ready. He began with LLC records, but my lawyer filed everything through a privacy trust. No names, no leads. Then came the phishing emails to my property manager, pretending to be tenants, asking who owned the place. Clumsy, desperate. He even called the title office, posing as a lawyer for another property. The clerk flagged him and called us. When those attempts failed, he turned inward. Amanda, I don't know exactly what happened, but a neighbor called the office, worried. Heard glass breaking, raised voices. Not just anger over bills, but fear. Maintenance went up, no answer. Through the door, Chad pacing, muttering, Amanda crying. The silence afterward felt heavier than the yelling. Days later, I got an envelope. No name, no return address. Inside, a note. I know what you're doing. Think you're clever. You don't scare me. I'll find you, and when I do, you'll regret it. No signature, but I knew the handwriting. Chad's angry scrawl, pressed too hard. uneven. I held the letter, heart pounding, not from fear, but memory. It took me back to that kitchen, him looking down at me like I was dirt. Amanda, not just silent, but complicit. Now he was grasping at shadows, choking on doubt, screaming into the void. Poetic, dangerous. So I doubled down. Lawyer contacted security. More cameras, discreet, legal, routine. I made sure the tenants were safe. The building wasn't going to crumble because one man couldn't bear the weight of his own cruelty. Amanda didn't call again, but the building manager told me she'd been walking to work. Her car sold. Utilities cut back. Lights off early, no heat some nights. The cracks weren't just in their relationship, they were in their survival. Still, I kept my distance. This wasn't revenge, it was resolution. Letting Chad's world shrink until he saw how small he really was. Letting Amanda decide, stay in the cage or take the key I'd left right before her. I knew she wasn't ready yet, but walls close in and secrets leak through cracks. I didn't expect the knock that night. Days of silence. No emails from management. No voicemails from Amanda. No threats. Just silence. The kind that feels like a storm crouched, waiting. Then the knock came. Soft, slow. My chest tightened. I opened the door. Amanda stood there drenched in rain, clutching a grocery bag like it was her last hold. Her eyes red, mouth open, but no words, like she'd run out of them days ago. I stepped aside. She came in, water dripping on hardwood. I gave her a towel. We moved without a word. I warmed the kettle, poured chamomile tea. She sat on the couch edge, like she didn't want to stay, didn't deserve to. Maybe she didn't. Staring into her cup, hollow eyes. "He's not who I thought he was," she said finally. I stayed quiet. Part of me always knew. I told myself it was stress, that he just needed support, that if I was patient, he'd come around. Still, I said nothing. She looked up, voice trembling. "He thinks someone's targeting us. Obsessed. Going through my phone, my emails. Last week he followed me to work, said he was making sure I wasn't involved." A shiver ran through her, not cold. He asked if I was hiding something, if you were hiding something. That caught my breath. She didn't wait. I told him I hadn't spoken to you in weeks, didn't know where you were. She paused, but that was a lie. I met her eyes. "I found your building in a security notice, same management company. I figured it out. Not hard." Amanda was smart, always had been. But smart doesn't mean brave. Now, she looked like someone who'd opened her eyes and hated what she saw. I didn't speak. Not yet. "I miss you," she whispered. "But I don't know how to be around you anymore." My hand tightened on the mug. "You left," she said, voice cracking. "And I let him push you out." Finally, I spoke. "No, Amanda, you didn't let him. You stood with him." That stopped her. She blinked, lips parted, wanting to deny, defend. But there was nothing left. I stood, walked to the window, stared into the night. "I begged for your voice that night," I said. "Just one word. Just one." Silence. Behind me, a broken exhale. "I didn't think it'd get this bad," she said. "I thought I could manage him." "You can't manage a man like that," I said softly. "You survive him or you leave him." She said nothing. Didn't have to. We sat, two women bound by blood, not trust. Not yet. Maybe never. When she finally rose to leave, she placed the mug down gently, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said softly. "I just needed to feel safe again, even if only for a moment." I walked her to the door. She hesitated, then spun around suddenly and wrapped her arms around me. At first, I didn't hug back. Then I did, carefully, cautiously, like someone holding onto a fragile memory, afraid it might slip away. When she pulled away, she said nothing. She just looked at me one last time and walked out. And as the door clicked shut, I felt something stir deep inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the faintest spark of something that could grow, if she let it. The invitation was sent on a quiet Tuesday morning, professional, with no fuss. Attendance meeting about upcoming building renovations in the common room next week. Mandatory, questions welcome. I knew Chad would come. I knew he wouldn't resist. He wanted a name, a face, someone to blame. Little did he know he'd be walking straight into the hands of the woman he'd discarded like a broken appliance. On meeting day, I arrived early, wearing a charcoal blazer and dark jeans, simple, elegant, unrecognizable. My hair fell in soft waves over my shoulders. I looked nothing like the woman who once begged for dignity at Amanda's kitchen table. The room filled slowly. Tenants arrived in dribs and drabs, some curious, some annoyed, most indifferent. Then Chad burst in, swaggering like a man ready for a fight, Amanda trailing behind like a shadow. He didn't look around, didn't see me. His eyes fixed on the property manager at the front. "Where is she?" he demanded. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge." The manager stayed calm. "All questions will be answered during the presentation," Chad sneered. Amanda stared at her shoes. I sat near the back, silent. The presentation began. Routine updates, upgrades, timelines, a new security system, improved landscaping, better insulation, practical changes funded partly by the rent Chad had bitterly opposed. Then the manager paused. "We'd like to thank ML Holdings for their commitment to revitalizing the property and prioritizing tenant comfort. The owner is here today. Any questions?" I stood. The room turned toward me. I walked forward slowly, steady and calm. Each step was a quiet heartbeat. Chad's face twisted with disbelief. Amanda's mouth fell open. I faced the crowd. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Margaret. I'm the owner of this building." Silence fell. Chad jumped up, chair scraping the floor. "You? This is a joke. What game is this?" I looked at him, really looked, seeing the cracks he'd hidden, the sweat at his collar, the puffiness under his eyes, the panic. "No game," I said softly. "Just business." He stepped forward. "You manipulated this. You've been behind it all. You raised our rent. You're trying to ruin us." I stood firm. "I gave you a roof. I made improvements. I treated every tenant fairly. What I didn't do was forget." He opened his mouth, but I turned back to the group. "If anyone has questions about the changes or improvements, I'll be happy to answer them after the meeting." "Thank you." I stepped aside. The meeting went on, but the tension lingered. Chad stayed standing, trembling and furious. Amanda sat with her hands clenched, eyes wide and wet. When the meeting ended, tenants approached me, shaking hands, asking questions, thanking me. Some had suspected, most had no clue. Chad waited until the room emptied, then strode toward me. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "But this is nothing. You've made an enemy." I met his gaze evenly. "No, Chad. I didn't make anything. You did. The day you looked me in the eye and treated me like I didn't matter." Amanda stepped between us. "Chad, stop." He turned to her, stunned. "What did you just—" I said stop. She repeated, louder this time. "She's not your enemy. She never was. You are." He stared at her as if struck, and in a way he was. Amanda turned to me, voice shaking. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the building, the money, any of it." I nodded. "I know. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you had to see it, not just hear it." She blinked back tears. Chad scoffed, stepping back. "You two deserve each other." "No," I said softly. "She deserves better." Then I turned and walked away. For the first time since that terrible night in their kitchen, I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge, not satisfaction, but power. quiet, steady, entirely mine. 4 days later, Amanda showed up at my door again, this time holding something that made my knees buckle the moment I saw it. A book, faded leather, torn corner, spine barely intact. My mother's diary. I opened the door without a word. She stepped inside, eyes wide, breath shaky. "I found it in my closet," she said. "The last time I visited, you must have left it behind." She placed it on the coffee table like it was sacred. And for me, it was. I read it. My heart stopped. I wasn't trying to pry, she rushed out, but I recognized the handwriting. I was just looking for something that made sense. Silence fell between us like a heavy curtain. "I didn't know about Harold Sterling," she whispered, "or the money, the trust, any of it." I nodded slowly once. I didn't know either. Not until I had nothing left to lose. Her voice broke. "Mum, why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were helpless?" I looked her in the eyes, and for once she didn't look away, because I was helpless. The night you closed the door on me, I had no plan, no money, not even a place to cry where someone wouldn't knock and tell me to be quiet. Amanda winced. I found the diary at my lowest point, counting coins for dinner, not speaking to anyone in a week. That diary didn't just tell me who I was. It reminded me I mattered, that my mother loved me and fought silently for me, even if she couldn't show it. Amanda sat down, hands clenched tight in her lap. I don't know how I became the kind of daughter who could do what I did. I keep asking myself that over and over. I walked to the window, staring down at the street below, the quiet hum of life passing by. "You didn't become her all at once," I said. "It was small choices, letting things slide, choosing peace over truth, believing love meant loyalty, even when it hurt." She stood and moved toward me. "I've left him." The words landed like a bomb. He tried going through my things again, my laptop, my bag. I told him no, that was... He screamed, packed a bag and left, said he'd be back. I changed the locks the next day. I turned to her, stunned. "I don't know who I am without him," she admitted, voice trembling. "But I'd rather find out than keep disappearing." A silence stretched between us, heavy with everything left unsaid. Then she glanced down at the diary. "You didn't deserve what I did. What we did. I can't fix that, but I want to try." I walked back slowly and sat beside her. "I used to dream of hearing those words," I said. "But now that you say them, they don't fix the past. They rewrite it." She looked at me, confused. I held her hand gently. "You see me now. That changes everything." We sat together for a long time, the kind of silence that doesn't hurt but heals. The kind that follows truth finally spoken. Before Amanda left that night, she paused at the door. "You didn't raise me to be weak," she said. "I just forgot how strong you were." I smiled softly. "No," I said. "You didn't forget. You just stopped looking." And now she was seeing everything. Not just who I'd become, but who I'd always been. When the email from Chad arrived, I almost didn't open it. The subject alone churned my stomach. "We need to talk now." I read his words carefully, sharp, frantic, dripping with desperation. "I know everything about the building, the inheritance, your little secret with Sterling. Think you're clever? Think you can ruin my life and walk away smiling? Let me make this clear. If you don't undo this, I'll go to the press. Your name, your mother's affair, everything. Let's see how your precious reputation holds up when everyone knows what kind of family you come from." I stared at the screen, stunned. He had finally connected the dots. Somehow, through Amanda or his own digging, he'd uncovered the truth. But I wasn't afraid. I'd planned for this moment the day I bought the building. I forwarded the email to my attorney. By morning, Chad received a cease and desist letter. Inside were records of every threatening message he sent to the property office, falsified documents submitted under a fake law firm, and tampered emails traced back to his IP tenant complaints, maintenance sabotage logs, even audio clips of his rants recorded in public spaces around the building. We didn't press criminal charges. Just one defamation and harassment suit was enough. He panicked, and I knew it because Amanda called 2 days later. "He's gone," she said, voice shaking. "Packed while I was at work. Left a note saying he was being hunted. Said you ruined his life." "He ruined his own," I said quietly. Amanda was silent then. "I'm sorry again. Always thinking he deserved my silence." "You were scared," I replied. "I've been there. Fear makes you small, but you don't have to stay that way." It wasn't long before Chad tried retaliation, posting vague rants on social media, implying corruption and betrayal. He never named names, couldn't afford to, not after the second letter from my attorney threatening legal action for every word. He went quiet after that, publicly at least. Privately, I knew he'd never forget the day he realized the woman he'd kicked out with 2 suitcases and a tired face now owned the roof over his head, the lease under his name, and the keys to every locked door he slammed in mine. Amanda, on the other hand, was transforming. She moved out within a month, found a small studio near her job, started therapy, joined a community art class. She even painted something for me, an abstract phoenix in dark reds and golds. I hung it above the fireplace. We talked more now, not every day, but when we did, it was real, honest, no more pretending. The last piece of the puzzle came in an envelope. Another letter. This one, from Mr. Goldstein. "Congratulations, Margaret. The building has officially been transferred. The last tenants have signed new leases. The lawsuit against Mr. Harmon has been settled in your favor. You are now free to sell, hold, or restructure as you choose." I folded the letter carefully, holding it close to my chest. This wasn't just about money, property, or revenge. It was about truth, reclaiming my name, my story, my strength. The next morning, I called a realtor. I was ready to close one chapter and open the door to a life I no longer had to survive. A life I could finally live on my terms. I sold the building late that spring. The final papers were signed on a bright, cloudless Tuesday. No fanfare, no ceremony, just the quiet click of a pen, a firm handshake, and the weight of 3 years of grief, betrayal, and silence lifting from my shoulders. The money wired to my account the next day, but I didn't celebrate. Instead, I wrote a check, a large one. Half the proceeds went to a local shelter for women and children in crisis. The kind of place I wished I'd known about the night I stood on that curb with 2 suitcases and no one to call. I asked them to name a wing after my mother, the Eleanor House. It was my way of honoring the woman who gave me strength in silence, who hid a lifetime of secrets so I could one day find the truth and become more than the world expected. The other half, I used to buy a small house, not extravagant, just a charming 2-bedroom on the street where I grew up in Cedar Park. Oak trees out front, a porch swing, enough room for quiet, for healing, maybe even for growing tomatoes if I felt like trying. On moving day, Amanda helped carry boxes. She said little, and so did I. After we unpacked, she sat beside me on the porch swing, legs tucked under her, eyes scanning the street as if searching for the girl she used to be. "I remember riding my bike here," she said softly, "before everything got complicated." I nodded. "You were always safe here," I told her. "I forgot how that felt," she whispered. "We never spoke of Chad, not necessary." His chapter closed quietly. No drama, just silence. He vanished into a new city, a new job, probably a new lie, but not before signing a non-disclosure and dropping his threats. The last thing he wanted was another legal fight or for the world to know his truth. He was a ghost now. Amanda stayed for dinner. We made grilled cheese and tomato soup like we used to when she was little. She laughed when she burned one side. I laughed when she blamed the pan. It was the first real laughter we'd shared in years. That night, after she left, I stood at the window, holding a cup of tea with both hands, watching moonlight stretch across the lawn. And for the first time in a long while, I said the words out loud, not to Amanda, but to myself. I forgive you. Because that was the hardest part, not rising from ashes, but learning I was never the fire they tried to snuff out. I was the spark they underestimated. They taught me silence meant weakness. I learned to weaponize it. They tried to erase me. I became someone they could never forget. I sat on the couch, opened the diary one last time, and tucked a note inside for Amanda to find someday. You don't need their love to be worthy. You don't need their approval to be strong. You only need the truth, and to never, ever forget who you are. The clock ticked softly in the background. My tea cooled in my hands, but my heart, it was finally warm. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to win. I just needed to be who I was all along. And now, finally, I was home. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.